Come join us as we go behind the scenes of today's most notorious cybercrime. Every time we get online, we enter their world. So we provide true storytelling to raise awareness, interviewing global leaders making an impact and improving our world. Translating cybersecurity into everyday language that's practical and easy to understand. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast by downloading our episodes on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. All right, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I'm your host, David Morrow, and in the studio today is Richard Hollis, one of the leading cybersecurity experts over in the UK with Risk Crew. Richard, welcome to the show, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the use of that term leading, by the way. And just as you said that, I thought, if I turn around, that means somebody would be behind me. And I'm actually leading, and I don't often feel that way. But I thank you for that idea. It sticks with me. Thanks. Good to see you again, David.
That's great to see you again. So a little brief background for anybody that may not have seen the prior episode. Crew, leading guider of businesses, especially in the finance industry, and you do a lot of security assessments, penetration testing, adversary emulation, things like that, right?
That's exactly the bulk of the market these days has been red team testing and then compliance. But no product, just services, product agnostic services to risk management.
Excellent. And you were originally from the motherland here in the United States. Scott, you're a Badger. That's great.
I'm a Badger in my head. I got the honorary title from the governor of Wisconsin a couple of years ago.
That's great. How have you adapted, just off topic a little bit, but how have you adapted to life over in the UK? Is it because I've been there. It's dramatically different, even though it looks very similar. It's dramatically different, but I loved it. So I was
first of all, what do they say? Separated by a common language. I absolutely feel that's applicable. I've been over and working in London for about 25 years now. I think I left the States about 25 years ago, came over to Europe and started a business in London. It was harder than I thought culturally. I absolutely, the Brits, the Europeans have a different approach to cyber. I think it's, by and large, honestly, I think it's far in advance than the U.S. Privacy is a very, very strong consumer-driven a driver here in terms of especially the Europeans. And the financial capital of Europe was, up until Brexit, located here in London. So this is where cybersecurity, for me, the seat of cybersecurity for Europe was. It's in some respects, I think it's light years ahead of the U.S. In the privacy, the data privacy, personal sensitive data, and the rights given to end users. That's been a blessing. But I think, like everybody, I think here in the UK, there's been a lot of credence given to governance as a structure. I think this thing I'm still shocked with is people haven't. The Europeans haven't focused in on risk appetite. What is the risk appetite? And to me, that's a fundamental question that I learned as an American. It all starts from risk appetite and policies, procedures, your governance, everything stems from that. And I still find them being more compliance-driven than they are actually risk-driven. But I don't know if that's the market or if that's a cultural thing. But it's interesting being an American working in the European cyber market.
Fascinating. So let me address that real quick. So is the cultural difference, do you think, is one's privacy, the value of one's personal data, is it more of a fundamental human right, viewed as a fundamental human right over there, compared to in America, where we curate our lives on TikTok and don't care and can't believe they're taking it away from us, stuff like that?
It is, David. I think you and I talked about this offline before. To me, I think there's a more heightened sense of the rights associated with a consumer of a service of a platform, and the Europeans tend to believe and actually give credence to privacy rights as a born, especially what I call Europeans. The UK is a little different. Everybody's a little different. Nordic's a little different. Southern, especially Central Europe, France, Germany are very, very focused on privacy rights. You've heard the argument on how hard it is to get GDPR implemented across Europe, because there's so many international organizations who not only can't do things like the right to forget. You solicit a company, say not only delete my data, but it's like I never visited your website, and that's very hard to do. In fact, impossible to do.
It's a hard burden on the company, right? Like to figure
exactly.
out, because they identify where did they contact us, what data do we have.
Do we have it in a backup of a backup of a backup of a backup?
Right.
And if so, can we get our hands on that? And so, but the Europeans never get up on trying to enforce it still. And B, companies are still working, as hard as they can to at least be accountable. I think at the end of the day, that's what I see the difference between American consumers of technology. They lack this. Yes, transparency is always lacking, but this accountability from the vendors. That you should be accountable in the event that you lose my data. And I think there's a higher sensitivity to that across amongst Europeans. Why do you need my data? I'm just coming to get my teeth cleaned or my hair done.
Right.
Why do you need my postcode for that? I'm buying a light bulb at the local hardware store, and I can't do the transaction without my postcode. And here in Europe, a postcode will tell you pretty much where you are, your GPS location, right down to where you live. So there's a higher sensitivity to wait a minute, that's my data. Why do you need it for this transaction? Is the data taken from the user in accordance with what's needed for the transaction, which I see is completely lost in the States. When I go back to the States, and the data that's asked from me, no matter what I'm doing, and just taken for granted. I think that to me is night and day between the Americans and what's happening in Europe.
Yeah, and we really get to the point where everywhere we go, every store that we go into, every website that we visit, we just assume we have to give it all up. We just assume, here's my home address, here's my zip code, here's everything. And it's really just remarkable, especially as we dig into these individual stories about what happens when your identity is stolen, and all of the challenges we have here with data brokers, right? Because there are so many organizations that will sell that data literally hundreds of times over and over and over. And then one of them gets breached, and you're like, I didn't even know that they had all this information. Are data brokers regulated? And I apologize for not knowing this, but are data brokers regulated in any meaningful capacity over there?
I wouldn't say a meaningful capacity, but they're required by law. GDPR is the law. It's the law. It's legislation, and you can be fined. Now, what constitutes compliance is in terms of it's a snowflake compliance. You would have to justify that what you've put in place is conducive to the sensitivity of what you're processing. So in some cases that's very easy. When you're processing medical data in other areas, it's not so obvious when you're processing voting preference data, and so there's and that's what GDPR does. It mandates that you do a risk assessment and you justify. And so if you're ever asked, you show them the results of the risk assessment you did on. And this is why we're protecting this data the way we are. And they have to, of course, be aligned. There's a business sense. But at the end of the day, it's that transparency that you thought about it. You did the math, you did the algebra, and you came out with X equals Y, and this is why we're going to encrypt that data or not encrypt that data, which I find very logical and very cost effective. You don't want to overprotect. Everybody's worried about underprotecting. It's for a business that's got to pay a lot of money for cybersecurity and products and controls. It's almost just as hard to have them overprotect.
Absolutely.
I was sorry, David. I'm thinking about. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was thinking about it. You just mentioned that, and I was thinking about the difference of Americans. And I've lived in Europe for a long time, and I just got in a fight with my sister who went to a baseball game, and she went, and it was bat day. where they give you all the attendees a bat, and it's a big
Right.
day if you're a fan. And so my sister is a fan, and she went to support her baseball team. And as this year, it was actually last season, she went to get, and she was standing in line to get her bat, and as she came up and they were handing her a bat, they said, "This year it's a little different. We need a swab of your DNA." And
they did not.
They did, and
they did. Wait a minute. Wait.
They did,
and this was here in the States.
This was here in the States. Yes, it was there in the States. And my sister, yes, they gave my sister a swab, took her DNA, and handed her the bat. And for that, she also got a 1-year subscription to ancestry.something.
Oh my gosh.
And a free, here's where your family came from, and here's what this is. And my sister was really excited. She called me up and she said, "Hey, I just got a new family tree from so and so." I said, "Really?" And she told me this. Yeah, they gave it to me on Bat Day. I gave them a swab, and I said, "Whoa, stop." And I had to remind her, I said, "Oh, my dear sister, your DNA is my DNA." Yes.
No. You got to be kidding me.
It was a transaction that happened between, and to me, that was when I heard about it after I was done crying, I thought, well, of course, everything's a transaction. And it was presented to her. She's older than I am, and it was presented to her, and she's been a lifelong fan of that baseball team as hey, this year we've got a special, here's what you get. You get a full family tree and this bat. And all we need from you is a DNA swab.
Right.
And your email address, and you're in. And to me, that's the difference. Now, would that happen here in Europe? I cannot dream of it. And I've never seen anything close. But in the States, that's just one of a lot of stories I've had. That one's in my own family, and I thought, well, there goes my DNA. And I'm glad my sister got that free family tree from it. But we don't get it. We just don't understand. We don't understand.
I'm still blown away. Now I have to research that, because now I have to go down that rabbit hole.
I'll email it to you offline. Who the team is. Now, is this done? It was a baseball team. It was a national baseball team. Is this, I went online, looked it up, said, yep, sure enough. Okay. Now, is it common practice? I don't know, but it struck me after I heard it from my own sister and saw her subscription to, this family history platform. I thought, okay, I guess just another day in the life. There goes
of being an American. Yeah, I mean, if it's free, you're the product, right? Like if it's free, you're the product. You are worth so much more. Your buying preferences, your interests, your location, all of that is of value, and it's sold for a lot more money than a bat or whatever basic product you might be shopping for. That's why
it was a good bat, though, David. It was a good bat.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, it was. You had one of the best stories I've ever heard, and I've actually brought it up several times in security awareness presentations or public speaking that we do, and that is the time you were doing a risk assessment penetration testing for an organization online, and they did, I believe it was in the adult entertainment industry, and privacy is very important there, right? Like you cannot disclose that. And they basically said, online, you're either my enemy or you're my customer. Yeah. Right. And it was that mentality. And I guess my question to you is, how often do you come across that, that viewpoint, that like absolute certainty that we are locked down, at least in this time, this segment of time, everything that we can see, we are locked out?
Yeah, David, the reason I told you that story is I don't see it. And when I do see it, that story is about 7 years old.
It's a great story.
And it is and I told it to you to both illustrate, an industry that you wouldn't, because this is an industry that's filled with spyware and crap. And meaning, if you're not a client, I'll give you spyware. Right. But once you're a client, welcome to the inner sanctum. And so the story went a long way with me, because not only we had never worked in the industry before, and we were doing penetration tests for the large banks, and obviously it was such a night and day difference, their approach. And it made me, I told you the story was, I asked him, I said, what do you know that I don't know? And he said, I know that on the internet you're either my client or my enemy. Period. And it's a war zone out there. And if you want free product, I'll give you free product, and I'll give you spyware and everything else, and make as much money off of you as I can.
Anything that will serve their interests, right?
That's right.
Yep.
But you give me your credit card, and you're welcome to the family. And the reason that stood out to me, David, is privacy was their business model. At the end of the day, that's exactly why they were so effective. There's zero tolerance for indiscretion. And and to me, I've worked for, I've held clearances and worked in the government. I've done nuclear facilities. I thought the closest that the industry that came to it was online gambling. Very, very tight on their cybersecurity controls, but not zero tolerance, not like the online adult entertainment industry. And so, the reason I remember, telling you that story is I've never seen another industry that's come close. And I've never seen another industry where I felt that they understood that what their users wanted. And right. That was my complaint. Why doesn't a bank feel our users deserve the highest privacy possible in our transactions? Just because it's their bank account or their online, but medical service providers, anybody. I'm just shocked at how people don't have the same expectations that they have for their own protection of their data. And I think what we were talking about is people. One of the things I tell my clients is if you protected that data, I'll walk into a board and say, raise your hands if your personal data is in the systems that we're talking about, and not one hand will go up. And you're like, well, you guys have no skin in the game, do you? You're not connected to this data. It's just ones and zeros. This is data about people's lives we're talking about somebody's husband or wife or children or, their DNA, whatever it is. And until you make that connection, it's all just ones and zeros. And it's a budget. It's a line item on a budget. But this is an industry, I think, that actually considers what their users want of them and delivers it. And I've not seen any other.
Ironically, it seems like other industries would benefit by viewing the data like they do, like the adult entertainment industry does, right? Because here's a question. Do you find that the reputational harm that comes from a data breach, is it more damaging in an industry that has privacy as part of the component of their product? Adult entertainment, people that visit it, they don't want other people to know that they're visiting it. So privacy is part of what they're buying, right? Same thing with a lot of industries. Let's say banking, let's say online gambling, right? Like there's certain ones that customers want to go and partake in, but they don't want the world to know. It would be embarrassing for them. It could be, reputationally harming. But are you seeing, is there a different approach that certain of these vendors are taking, or is the reputational harm more damaging?
I think I don't. I still say that industry and that industry alone stands out to me. Now, there's been other things that you've seen. Tailors like Ashley Madison, a platform that offers quote unquote, discrete users, and that makes me laugh because that was a mess. Literally what they were doing is, it's free to enter, pay to exit. Now, let me say that one more time: free to enter, pay to exit. So you come join our platform. You can have an affair discreetly, okay? But if you want to leave, you pay us, and I think it was very minimal, 5 or 10 Canadian dollars, and we'll delete your data. Well, anybody in IT knows there's no such thing as a delete button. You don't delete my data. Right. But pay to, right there, the business model, free to join, pay to exit. That's like, have you ever been to a nightclub where you get in free, but you got to pay to get out? Something's wrong there. And the way they were hit, the hack was beautiful because it was just some hacktivist who said, that's not right. You're lying to your customers. And so they went and got the backup and made the backup public because, and by the way, they were selling the data. they were selling the data to, so, and Ashley Madison, as far as I heard, went out of business and then resurrected. But at the end of the day, the ethics of the business are for me are mirrored in their cybersecurity approach, their philosophy, which is why I found the adult entertainment such a spin around, because you think, boy, that's the most ethical company industry on the planet. It's I've worked with I think the other idea that pops in my head is I've worked with religious organizations. We've worked with NGOs who have child data, to bad guys, and they're conscious of the right and wrong about child data getting into the wrong hands. But the problem is they don't have any money. They don't have the money that the banks
they really struggle to
SCADA
implement
networks
the right
exactly. But the effort is there, and they have to make risk decisions about, and they process, child data in third world countries, and my heart goes out to them because they know how sensitive the data is, and they feel they have a social responsibility, an obligation to protect it accordingly. But there's only so much they can do because they're an NGO and they have limited funds, and that's an industry in general that I feel could use a lot of help from putting up an ISMS, putting up a framework together that would be conducive to here's what you can get, here's the most you can get for your money. But now, David, you're poking at a scab for me that is I spent 30 years in this industry, and I've been extremely disappointed on how all vendors, especially, let me tell you about one, cybersecurity vendors. If in terms of trust, abusing our trust, we're buying products from cybersecurity vendors who aren't even practicing, secure by design. And you just read a list of all the cybersecurity vendors. And if SolarWinds wasn't a big wake up about, hey, wait a minute, we've got trusted connections to that we're buying these quote unquote trusted products, and yet Fortinet, SonicWall, RSA, LastPass, all of these, every day, every week, every month, there's another security vendor. I'm sorry, these are security vendors. Isn't that the whole basis of why we go to them? These trust products, and clearly we can't trust them. And when you find out it's a 0-day vulnerability, you're thinking, 0-day vulnerability? What's a 0-day vulnerability? It's an unknown. How can a security vendor have an unknown anything in a product they built and developed and sold to me? Whether that's a firewall or an antivirus, and to me, that's the biggest break of trust because I'm in the industry. When in terms of expectations about the protection of data, I look at vendors, and some vendors are off by a mile. Some vendors get it, but the vendors that I'm most disappointed with as a professional in this industry are the ones that I've recommended for years to clients who are trying to protect the sensitive data, and that these, and clearly in the last 2 to 3 years, we're seeing that cybersecurity products, i.e., trusted vendors, have become the attack vector of choice because they're crap when it comes to this.
It's devastating to them. I mean, it's really devastating to them. I mean, it's and a lot of it. It's interesting because I see a lot of practitioners in the field start to turn away from them. Maybe not right away because they have existing contracts, but when they go to renew, etc., they start to move away from them because they're like, we can't get hit like that. We're here recommending you, and then you're letting us down.
And if you can't trust, it's like hiring a guard to protect your house.
Undermines your credit. You might as a
Exactly, and you lose. I mean, there's the word. There, leadership. Where's the leadership? And if you don't practice what you preach in this industry, you're not a leader. And yet, these product vendors who have incredible brand names and who are recognized as the leaders of the industry don't practice something as simple as secure by design. And look at all of them who are, having breaches in their own systems. And we talked before. I mean, that's just not leadership. These people are not shepherds. They're sheep. They're as lost as we are. They're struggling to protect their own systems and selling us things that we buy to protect ours. It's to me that's the biggest breach of trust in terms of expectations are the ones I find in my own industry. I shame on us for not practicing what we preach.
Yeah. So let me play a devil's advocate for a second. So how can they protect from a 0-day, right? Like it's a 0-day. They didn't know there was a vulnerability. They, and the cycle sometimes is challenging because they may even discover it. They announce it and they're patching it. But in that window of time, people with bad intent will come and exploit it. Well, how does that get fixed? I'm just trying to think of what somebody listening could think of.
Okay, well, I'm not, we are generalizing. Commercial software is extremely complex.
Of course.
The problem is we don't seem to know what it contains, what it runs,
Right.
what it connects to, or what data it connects, filtrate. All of this is a problem. But I'm coming to you, David, to buy a product. So I think that's your responsibility to make sure. Now, if your product is made of sub-libraries that you don't know where they came from, meaning you don't know if there's a 0-day.
Right.
The definition of a 0-day is an unknown to a guy like me who's been doing this long. All right, so I'll say this again. If I'm manufacturing something, how could I have something unknown in it?
Exactly. Well, it really gets to the need for like SBOMs,
Yes.
like software bill of materials, kind of like on a cereal box, right? Like you need to know what you're putting in your body. Like you need to, like you can't
Good
build
one,
something based on some code that you copy and pasted somewhere, right?
Good one. You're absolutely right. But the problem is economic incentives. The market rewards quick and fast.
Yes.
Quick and fast, new features. And also the market rewards data exfiltration. Give me an app that can pick up GPS data, geolocation data, biometrics. I mean, this is what the market incentivizes. Software out there today is the faster you can get it to market. Doesn't that's what's rewarded. The more features, and of course, the more features that exfiltrate data. That's an attack vector to guys like you and me. And so there's a disincentive to take the time to actually look at the libraries if you're using open source libraries for your product. Okay, I get it. But then guess what? You're responsible for what they contain. That's it.
Right.
Accountability. And so, I don't buy into this 0-day vulnerability. Sorry, the buck stopped with you. You don't pass that 0-day vulnerability along to me and suddenly it's my fault. It's my risk. And you've given me that risk by using a library that you were not intimately, wasn't intimately known to you,
Well,
1.
In other fields, it doesn't apply. When you think of medical malpractice or medical devices, things like that, right? They are required and liable and accountable for every subcomponent within those, right?
Yes. Yeah, you buy a car and the brakes don't work and you go through the windshield, you got a nice looking lawsuit there. You buy a firewall and it lets traffic through a port that it shouldn't, you should have accountability from your vendor. And that's all I'm looking for. I understand in today's software market, hardware, there are going to be holes. It's not an easy, but the market rewards speed and does not reward security or privacy. And until it does, or until there's accountability, it won't.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent point. So I haven't asked you about the zero trust model and zero trust approaches. Are you seeing benefit organizations that are trying to develop zero trust architecture approaches like that? What are you seeing in the organizations that you're supporting?
I'm not okay. I'm outing myself now in terms of my zero trust. No, I feel zero trust is kind of a buzzword that was given to us by the market. And there are, time to time there's something new and tasty and we should all use it. But at the end of the day, I'm finding, honestly, of my client portfolio that our company deals with, maybe 10% are seriously interested in zero trust, and it's financially unachievable to them. And once that comes into play, business.
Is it because if it's too difficult, it's a poor customer experience, right?
Exactly.
If it requires constant re-authentication, then employees get frustrated, or consumers using the product or platform or whatever it is.
That's it in a nutshell, David. And if it's a poor business experience, that means it's a poor business experience. I've probably seen about 15 large organizations who were 2 or 3 years into a zero trust program abandon it because it was stopped revenue. And at the end of the day, they were still having the same problem. So because they could never round the corner to make it whole, as it were, they would take it step by step and never finish the 27th step. So, by step 23, it became cost prohibitive. So I don't know. To me, I'm one of these guys, David, that's just old. Maybe it's old think, or I'm just too, I look for pragmatism. So when I look at thing like zero trust, I see that to me, the threat surface is divided between people, process, and technology. If you're protecting anything from anybody, it's through your people, through your processes, and through your technology. Okay, so I look at any company who's not, if you have a budget of 100,000, if you're not spending 33,000 on your people, 33,000 on your process, and 33,000 on technology, I say you're not balanced. So anybody who starts to, and every company I've seen who's taken on Zero Trust, it's all about the technology and a little bit of process, but at the end of the day, their whole budget goes into this, and they neglect their process and they neglect their people. And so what that results in is you neglecting to protect 2 out of the 3 attack surfaces to your business. Right. And that's what I think is one of the biggest fallacies here. In my mind, we will continue. Nobody's going to come up with a silver bullet for security education awareness training. But you know what, David? Nobody's tried. Nobody's tried in the last 30 years. Have you seen anything that you thought, well, that's interesting? Somebody must have put some money into that. And, people are a third of our problems as far as I'm concerned. And even more so if you look at the statistics. But at the end of the day, that's why I see it. I think 2 years from now, we won't be talking about Zero Trust, or we'll be talking about something else. But until we talk about something that that gives equal importance to all 3 attack vectors, I think we're not doing our jobs.
So what about, let me ask you this. This is why I enjoy speaking with you, because it's very pragmatic. It's very realistic. Since we last talked, generative AI was released and it's been everywhere, and everybody was afraid that there's going to be all of these massive, exponential increases in the types of threats and all of this. And for I don't see it. And so I'm curious what you're seeing. Have you seen, I think that social engineering, phishing emails, they've gotten a little better, right? I mean, some of the examples, but other than that, I haven't seen AI been leveraged to a degree that is alarming yet because of generative AI and the commoditization of it. What is your input? What are you seeing?
I see exactly that, David. I share that opinion. Meaning I was, and this is my spidey, sense is tingling because I'm worried that I'm not seeing something. Right. And I have a good view. One of the blessings I have as a consultancy that doesn't sell product and, large banks to small mom-and-pop.com selling flowers is I see all kinds of things and I get a really good understanding of what the threat landscape looks like. And I've worked out in Europe for like 30 years. And I started looking, across the landscape about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, as we started to get so close to generative AI and the potential for it to be used as a tool. And yes, just like you said. So what I see is what you see. I see better phishing emails. Okay, I'm hearing voice, pretexting on a phone, social engineering. That's really good.
Deepfakes have gotten, there have been some examples. Deepfakes that's significant. That's something, but that can be remedied through training of people.
Yes, right? it is. And the thing is, it still needs a lot of data. So what I'm seeing is a lot of attempts right now that I think are going to get so good that they'll be successful in 6 months to a year. Deepfakes on the telephone where they've got enough digital data from the CEO that the CEO that they can call and literally have the CEO tell his or her, PA, I need some expenses cut to this, change the make a deposit to this bank account or this credit card, pay off so I can fly. Okay, that's getting. But outside of that, which by the way is no small hill of beans. I mean, that is something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. A telephone attack done by a computer who can pass as another
or the live
identity.
Video attacks. I mean, we've seen them with the live video where somebody will send a business email compromise email, right? And then they'll say, "No, I've been trained. I know not to do this based on this email." Great. Jump on a Teams meeting or jump on a Zoom with me. And then they get on live and it's their boss or it's somebody else. And they see and they can ask questions and they get it resolved. It's really, but it's all deep faked, right? But we're using it for, have to be policies in place, right? You still have to still verify independently. Just have a process in place where you still reach out through a different channel just to verify before making a series of transactions, say that add up to $25 million.
And that, to me, David, is where people just can put their money, invest right now in good policies, procedures, and start training. Because as this threat grows, and it will grow, at least they have, we waited till the last minute to talk to our people about cyber threats. And we're in the opportunity now, we're in the doorway of this technology where we can start sending the right messages in terms of, what the potential is. Just good practices, question everything, and start to train them to question everything. Because when AI does come into play in terms of an attack tool, I'm sure it will blow my mind. What I'm seeing now is just what I expected to see, and what I'm telling my customers is the key right now is invest in some policies and some education to your people. But I tell you, I started to think, we are using, in terms of what we're using, we're rolling AI into red team testing, which is, which makes a better, in terms of telephone pretexting. We've tried to do some SMS AI attacks and stuff. So it's a useful tool to me as running a consultancy, and I'm hoping to, and we're trying to make sure that we develop it in step by step, and with what the threat actors are using right now. We're playing around with it, and we're telling clients policies, start to teach the staff what this is going to be, because when it comes up on, it's going to be a wall when you hit it with your business. There'll be start to break now. Governance is what I spend my time on. Is what's the framework for control? What's the framework of policies and people and process that you need to educate yourself? But there's enough scary things out there, from hallucinations to just unknowns, unknown factors. And businesses are every business I know is rushing into it, and the other ones don't even know they're using it, which is almost a bigger risk. They don't know it's already in their business, and their marketing department is using it to rewrite blogs or whatever.
Well, and it's really the age-old concern of shadow IT, right? Because you don't know what every platform, everything that you're using, they all advertise that they're all have AI, even though it's the same platform as it was 3 years ago. But now it's AI, and you don't know. I mean, there's so many organizations that still don't know everything that's being integrated into their network. And that is a huge risk. But again, that's policies, right? That's governance, isn't it? Like, that is still people capturing all of the data, knowing what is all out there.
Yeah, and again, you get the basics. We always pivot back to the basics. The fundamentals of the integrity of the code, the libraries. It's the secured by design fundamentals that are going to drive this, or drive the risk associated with how AI is used for us or against us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, sir, thank you so much. Hey, before I let you go, what if for somebody wanting to get into cybersecurity, the field, starting their career or making a shift from another career, what's some of the advice you could share? What advice would you give them?
Recently I spoke at a university, and I was asked on a live stage, how did you get into your field? Because was there a cybersecurity field 35 years ago? And I thought,
there wasn't when I was starting.
But you know what it is that I find? I'll tell you what I look for in people we hire is, obviously it's not it's not technology. It's not your command of technology. It's an inquisitive mind that takes you far from for me in cybersecurity, and pragmatism. But it's also something I found myself confessing on a stage in front of a lot of people. I wished I didn't. And now that it's out there, I remember telling somebody that I wasn't when I was growing up, I wasn't one of these kids who knew what, who'd look at his hands and say, I should be a surgeon or a concert pianist, or, I couldn't, I wasn't a carpenter. I wasn't an electrician. I couldn't play a piano. I couldn't sing or dance, or, bad at maths. I mean, you name it. And so I had a struggle when I was looking at growing up, figuring out what am I going to do with my life. And I remember thinking at a very young age, I was born and raised, my parents were divorced, and I spent a lot of time on the street. And quite frankly, you spend a lot of time on the street and you develop an eye for, let's call it opportunity, And as I got older, I thought, okay, I have a a talent for, I remember I was a paper boy and I'd walk by and I think, well, that window's open. There's a bike that's not locked and there's a baseball that's left on the porch, and I'd see all this vulnerability. Now, I wasn't a thief, but I clearly found myself processing.
You saw the vulnerability that somebody with malintent could take advantage of.
Exactly. And I thought, well, so I realized that I had a skill set for identifying opportunities or vulnerabilities, name them what you will. And I thought, well, okay, I could be a thief.
Detective. You could either
right, or a professional thief,
right, or a thief, right?
Yeah, and then I thought
cybersecurity specialist.
Then I thought, well, I couldn't carry a gun. I didn't, and I couldn't do time. I knew at a very young age I can't do time. Jail really
is too good to do time, man.
That's right. So I found myself gravitated to a profession that had at its essence, can you identify a weakness that other people overlook? My first job was I was a store detective, a real job, and I remember I found it so easy. They thought I was the greatest store detective ever, and I walked in and it was common sense to me. You know how to spot a shoplifter in a store?
How?
You walk in, David, and you look across the horizon, and anybody looking back at you, there's a 90% certainty you've got a potential shoplifter. All right?
They're looking
of course, it's just
store cop.
Exactly. They're looking for the same things you were if you were a store detective. Is that person looking at me? Anybody not looking? All right. Then the second thing is you turn around, put your head down, walk around for 3 or 4 minutes, look again. If they're still scanning the horizon, just follow that person, and they're walking out the store with something. And to me, it was this pragmatic. I was a kid. I never shoplifted, but I'm sure I thought, hey, I wonder. I looked around, looked for cameras, looked for other store detectives. Yeah, it's just that kind of thing came natural to me, and people would say, you're a born thief, and I'd say, not really, but I can just see what I can see opportunity. Anyway, the point is, I'm also saying that goes a long way in, security in general, but specifically in cybersecurity. Yes. Somebody can see a vulnerability and exploit it for gain, or at least likes the intellectual exercise. That's what I look like when we look for when we hire penetration testers, as well as GRC people who understand risk, because that's what risk is about, risk and reward.
Absolutely. Yep. That's fantastic. Richard Hollis, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. What do you have on the horizon? What's coming up next? Are you doing any presentations, any public speaking?
We've got a lot of stuff. It's a busy year for us here. We do about 2 presentations a month on stuff like AI, red team testing. So yeah, we got a busy day. I'm also a trainer, and I do security awareness training, and that's a blast. So we got a busy year. Things are hot, especially for the summer. Usually things slow down in the summer, but we're looking at a pretty big year of doing fun things. Still fun. Still getting out of bed.
Fantastic. I love doing. We do quite a bit of it. And I love doing the live security awareness trainings, because it's people have, like, even if they've seen it before, it always changes. And they're like, I cannot believe this is what's happening. And I'm like, yeah, every time you get online, we enter their world. Like,
it makes all the difference. Face training to me makes all the difference if you're going over their hearts and minds. It's not that people don't want to do it; they just don't know what to do or why. And if you connect the what to the why, it is some big gains to be had. So it's fun. It's a blast. Dave, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.